I would like to call upon Ankur Singla. Ankur is the founder and CEO of HelpChat. From Akosha HelpChat, hear it out from Ankur on building, scaling, and taking tough decisions on your way. With a big round of applause, welcome the gentleman.
Hi everyone, my name is Ankur Singla. I'm the founder and CEO at HelpChat. Just to understand the audience, how many of you over here run your own startups? Can we do a show of hands? Okay, and out of, how many of you are here who are students? And I guess maybe some of the other people work at various companies. How many of you have had a startup for more than 2 years over here? Okay, so we have quite a few people who've been part of the ecosystem for a while. I think Ashish called me last week and said, hey, you know, we would love to have you there to share the journey. We were doing something very different about a year ago. To what we are doing today. There were a lot of ups and downs through the journey. So what I'll do is I'll very quickly, take you through. We've been at it for about 4.5 years. I'll take you through that journey, and then I'd prefer answering a lot more questions rather than talking myself. I come to the startup world with a very unconventional background. I happen to be a lawyer. I actually studied here in Bangalore for 5 years at National Law School. I think law was an odd choice. I didn't really want to do law, but it was a good college. I had very smart peers, and I learned a lot. Grew up it's kind of a very important phase of your life where you go from being a kid to, an adult. And I worked for a couple of years. I hated it. I was in London as a corporate lawyer. I always used to have this envy of the other side of the table. The other side of the table were usually the clients, the businessmen, the people who were usually, doing much better, enjoying their work, had taken a lot more risks. And I knew I was about 24 and a half back then. And I knew that I had to quit, do something on my own for me to be able to really, fulfill my dreams or to really have a good work life. So I quit in 2009. I belong to Chandigarh, so I first went to Chandigarh where my parents stay. And, I was trying to do a startup, which was essentially a copy of a US startup, which is called LegalZoom. So LegalZoom was this company in the US. They had in 2012 raised about $65 million from Kleiner Perkin, one of the dot-com survivors. So LegalZoom was essentially to help you do your legal documents online on the web. So my first startup was called Vasiyat.com. So I did that in 2009. I had no clue of how internet worked. Picked up a domain name which I didn't really know, would not make much sense later. Vasiyat, for those who don't know, means a will. So we were making wills for people online. So it was as random an idea as it gets. So I worked hard. I hired my first developer, and started learning a little bit about coding. In those days, mobile was very relevant. There was, learning about front-end coding, back-end coding, how does the database work, how do you build something for scale, and so on. So we worked at all the wrong things. There was no such thing as MVP either back in 2009, or at least I hadn't heard of it. We used to read a little bit of Paul Graham, but there was pretty much nothing else. After working on the product for about 8-9 months, we launched it. I sent a mail to 40 users and 40 friends of mine, and all of them mailed back that this is quite shit. Why would anybody make a will online? And till then, whenever I would meet them face to face, I would keep convincing them that this would happen. And if they wouldn't believe, I would just say that inko chamak nahi raha hai, ye theek log nahi hai, I'll go and talk to somebody else. So I think it was a bit of delusionary phase, but I think you have to be slightly delusional to be doing a startup in the first place. So that failed. It was difficult, but I think the other thing that happened was that I decided to move from Chandigarh to Delhi. The reason for that was I had made 2 offers to 2 guys who were just graduating from Punjab University. There's very little talent in Chandigarh, at least back in 2009 there wasn't that much. So on the day on which the guy was supposed to join, one guy calls up that, and neither of them turned up. And so I called one of them, and he said, "Sir, मैं आ नहीं सकता." मैंने कहा क्या हो गया? तो कह रहा है मम्मी नहीं मान रहे. So I was like, okay, fine. Like I didn't know what to say. And this is like a grown-up man. He's 24. He's just graduated and so on. So I called the other guy up and I asked him, "आपने आना था, आप आए क्यों नहीं?" And he says, "मेरा दोस्त नहीं आ रहा तो मैं क्या करूँगा?" So I'm like, this is not the sort of place I can actually think of building a startup, a company. And Chandigarh is a great place. I don't know if any one of you are here from Chandigarh, but yeah, okay, yeah, two of you. So I grew up there, but very difficult to build a company. So I moved to Delhi. I got a 2 BHK in Kalkaji. It was one of those. How many of you are here from Delhi at some point? Okay, we have a few people from Delhi. One of those thin, long houses which have no light as you enter it. As a single lawyer looking for a house without a job, getting a place in Delhi was very difficult. And I started out there. And then I think things started to improve. We got our the first thing that we did was we said, okay, this is obviously, it doesn't make sense. So we said, let's expand the kind of things we'll do for our users. So we had only wills on Wasiyyat.com. So we needed a new name. So we went for an empty name this time. Last time it was way too specific. This time we'll name it something that we can do anything in, because we had no clue what we were trying to do. So we said, let's add as many documents onto the platform. So we said you could make a will, a rent agreement, or a power of attorney. And then one day I was talking to somebody and somebody suggested that, why don't you help people with consumer complaints also? And I said, look, that's a very messy place to be. I don't really want to do it, but let's see. And I put the 4th button there. And then slowly luck started, working out. Rediff covered us in 2010. We got our first, 400 visits on the same day. And almost 90% of the users started clicking on consumer complaints. And we got 65 complaints on the same day. So in a way, we inadvertently, found a product market fit. It was obvious that, the other things won't work. In retrospect, it was clear. Rent agreement your broker does for 500 rupees without too much hassle to you, and it involves a visit to the local registrar and so on, sometimes at least. Power of attorney is usually CA's handle. And wills, well, nobody makes them. And for the people who are actually on the internet, it's very difficult to suggest to your dad that Papa will banalo. So, that is not happening. So there is no way to actually, focus on that business. And so we changed and we renamed the company. Actually, the name had already been Akosha, but we removed everything else overnight. And just put consumer complaints, we'll help you get them resolved. So by now it is Jan 2011. I was struggling with two very big problems. One was I was quite clueless. So I went and became part of the Morpheus accelerator program. Again, have you guys heard of Morpheus? Because it's almost not around anymore properly. But when it was there, at least for people like me, it was a godsend. It was run by a guy called Samir Kuglani and Nandini. Two of them, husband and wife pair. They had done their startup, met with reasonable success, but I found them to be very great mentors for me. So they had a 4-month acceleration program. Actually, there are right now quite a few companies who were part of Morpheus at one point, but because Morpheus is not around, you don't hear about that too much. So Practo was one of them. Common Floor was another one. Interview Street was another one. We were there, and there was another company called Plivo, which has gone to the US and raised money from Andreessen Horowitz and a couple of other funds as well. So they were actually, for a startup accelerator which is not around, they saw a reasonable amount of success with at least some companies that they did. They did about 40, out of which 5-6 are still around and are doing reasonably well. But anyway, so that was one. The second challenge that I had was, as a non-tech person, I needed a tech person to help me build the vision and so on. And that was incredibly painful. Back in 2011, I wrote a blog post on this as well called Saath Developer Maaf. So I had gone through 7 developers who had come and gone, and I was really, almost mind-fucked that there must be something wrong with me. But it ended up being that actually the real problem to solve for was traction and not to look for a CTO, because most of the times what I understood was it's better to actually, or rather the way to get a really good CTO on board is probably not to focus on hiring him, but to focus on building the company in such a way that it would attract the right sort of person to you. So that was one tough learning. But around that time, we took the call that, instead of hiring our 8th CTO candidate, and this was over a period of 1.5 years, so it was fairly painful. In the middle, I went and started learning how to code myself. On the weekend, I started taking coding classes, and that too for Drupal, PHP. So Drupal was the overall thing we were using, and then some PHP hooks I started writing and all. But it was pretty obvious that this won't work, and we can't really build something big and massive with that. So I outsourced tech, not the greatest idea. Those days, Paul Graham's articles had two big things. One is never be a single founder company. So that itself was a big issue. And the second one, obviously, that it is awesome to have a tech co-founder, and which also I didn't have. So we took the call to outsource because there was no other easy path in front of us. So there was this very smart guy. He had a lot of experience, and he had a bunch of techies under him. And I'm telling this for those who are not probably tech guys and probably struggling. We gave away about 6% of our equity, and we said, look, we'll give you 45,000 rupees every month. You develop for us. The senior most guy got the equity, the people under him got the salary, and that's how we kick-started it. So then the product kept getting built side by side, and I could completely focus on getting more and more growth into the business. So the business that we were doing was essentially the first thing that we understood inadvertently by the Rediff article was the fact that people needed help with consumer complaints, but it was still not a product market fit. It was still not something that we could say that we can build into a large business or actually get people to pay for. So in Feb 2011, and I'll jump through the story much faster after this anecdote. But in Feb 2011, I got 2 interns, and we said, let's go to find the shortest path from A to B. How do we, instead of waiting for consumers to come onto our website and then file a complaint and then we find a way for them to pay, we should rather find the shortest cut. So in those days, if you had posted a complaint on Mouthshut and left your phone number, we would pick up the phone and call you, and we would say, hey, we are this new organization trying to help people with getting their complaints resolved. We know it is very, very painful after having called the call center, but we can help you out. And we called 768 people, and we converted 31. So these 31 people agreed to pay 500 rupees per person, 500 rupees per complaint, and that's how we got started. And then from there on, it was no looking back. So first 1.5, 2 years were about unlearning what I had learned as a lawyer, and learning about tech, learning about internet, learning about product, and so on. And then finally hitting upon a product market fit, and then from there on scaling. A lot of it was done with very little money, so I pumped in, I had saved about 13-14 lakhs during my 2 years in London. I pumped that in. Then the Morpheus 5 lakh rupees came, and then we slowly grew. In May this year, we raised about 100 crores from Sequoia and one other fund. So it's been a very, very exciting journey. Lots of downs. I think for people like most startups or people who are generally ambitious, the highs last a lot shorter or last for a lot less time than the lows do, because every other day we are struggling with something or the other. I'll cut short. I'll now talk about more recent things that have happened in the company. Around 1 year ago, actually not 1 year ago, about 2 years ago, in Jan 2014, we were still a primarily web company. And we launched a phone line where we said this is the National Consumer Helpline equivalent, but done a lot better. You could, as a consumer, call us and tell us your problem, and we would help you solve it. So we launched that, and our numbers doubled overnight. I remember we were doing about 1,000 complaints a day back then, and we jumped to 2,000 overnight. But the interesting thing that happened with that was that the nature of issues that were coming to us changed drastically. So earlier, a person would write a complaint saying, "Mere 30 rupees caller tune ke cut gaye." Like 30 rupees got deducted for a Airtel caller tune without my assent. And now they would say, "How do I move from 2G to 3G?" So suddenly we realized that by launching the phone line, we were moving up in the value chain, where we were no longer about complaints, but we were becoming more and more about queries, and over time moving towards discovery and transactions and so on. So earlier you would say my set-top box is not working, or I had recharged this much amount. Now I don't know where that recharge amount is. Now you would ask which is the best deal on recharge, or which is the best deal on X, Y, and Z. And the other good thing that happened with this change was that suddenly we were not always dependent on the brand in resolving the complaint of the consumer like we were earlier. In this case, it became more about things that we could service ourselves by building a knowledge base and giving people a much better experience and so on. So that's how that is where the seed of HelpChat was born, because again, it was totally inadvertent. We had actually launched it to increase the numbers, but it changed the nature of interaction on our platform. And from there on, we built a mobile app. The first mobile app actually didn't work at all. We had built a mobile app which was like an IVR system, where we thought, in any case, let's map out what is the consumer journey when he calls a call center of an Airtel. Airtel gets about 2 crore calls a month. So for an Airtel, out of those 2 crore calls, a lot of them, only 5 lakh might be about complaints, rest of them are about queries, etc. So let's build an app which is a visual IVR. You press 1, 3, and 7, and you click call. It will directly connect you to postpaid billing human being. And when the call gets disconnected, you come back from the dialer to our app, and we asked you to rate it. If it was good, great, it is a data point we have. If it was bad, we would ask you to file a complaint. And that was the app we kind of went out with. We got some 15,000-20,000 downloads, and we went to users and they said, look, everything is fine, but is there a way for us to not have to pay for the call? Which was such an odd feedback to get, because we thought they would have feedback on the IVR, they would have feedback on 20 other things, but they said, is there a way we don't have to do that? So first we started speaking to cloud telephony companies to see if at all that makes the app more popular, we can even try that. But it very soon became obvious that that is not the way to do it. And the next thing that happened is, can we get the brands to start chatting on the platform and so on. Now at this point, we already had about 25 or 28 enterprise clients who were paying us close to lakh and a half or 2 lakhs every month based on SaaS. It was a SaaS software that we had created for them to be able to manage all the complaints that we were giving to them. So the business was making money, and we had a lot of relationships with the brands. So we thought we could definitely build a product which could connect consumers to brands or enterprises over chat, and then we'd be able to get them to respond. So that's how kind of the idea changed from pure play web complaining to be able to do other things rather than complaining, and then it became very, very broad to what we are doing today. I think in terms of from the journey perspective, I think there are 3-4 things which have kind of helped us. I think the first thing has been that like the previous speaker, Samar was I think saying, you've got to be like a cockroach, you just survive. And I think one thing that I keep telling myself and my team and during the bad days is that there's a lot to be had by staying in the game. So once you're dead, there's no point. But do whatever it takes for you to be able to survive, and if you'll survive, something good will happen. Building companies will take 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and that's perfectly fine. But if you're around, you'll be the one who'll build something meaningful. The second thing I think which was very useful for us was that find the shortest path from A to B. I think this was a lesson learned with a lot of effort. It's not very intuitive. So for example, in the early days, we would say, if we want to launch X, for that we'll have to do this, and then this. And only then we can do that. So we would always, my job almost now has become in the company is to just find ways of short circuiting, to not make anybody behave like a big company. If you just want, if your objective is, for example, to find the customer intent, you probably don't even need to build a website or a mobile app and 20 other things. Find a way to do that without having to go through all of these processes. So that I think helped us a lot. I think the third thing is the team, because of the fact that I didn't have technical skills. I made sure that I surrounded myself with engineers. I have no other lawyer in the company. Thankfully, I'm able to talk intelligently enough with the engineers at least. And nobody has left us from the top team in the last 4 years. All of them I've met inadvertently. My network didn't include any engineers because I had done commerce in +2 and then law in college. So I had no engineer friends, but I think the top team has stayed, and I think one thing that has worked for me as the CEO and the founder has been that the whole style of working has been very, very open. We pretty much, the top 7 people, we are very, very open in terms of communication, and we take decisions a lot of times with consensus. Obviously, the buck stops at me, and I'm sometimes I have to take some hard calls as well. So I think very generic things. There is no rocket science, but I think there were a lot of low moments. I never did ever think of shutting it down, but I think just staying in the game is everything. And I think if you actually look at most people who've been very successful, barring a few like Bhavesh or at Ola, and Flipkart guys also in a way started a comparison shopping website before they started Flipkart, but they weren't down in the dumps for so long. But actually for a lot of people, the journey has been full of ups and downs. People have taken some amount of time to actually find it. So if you're guided by the philosophy that this is going to take some time, I think things in the long term should work out. I think that's about it. I guess that was the purpose of talking about Akosha to HelpChat journey. I think what I'll do is I'll start taking questions, and I think I'll be able to then probably talk about things which are going on in your mind. So can we have some questions? Is there anybody who has any questions? Okay, there are two people. Okay.
I'm sorry to be asking this as the first question, but we had this presentation from Haptech this morning. So where do you compare with yourself with Haptech in this journey?
So there are two ways to answer that. One is that we do very, very closely follow every competitor out there. We do mystery shopping on ourselves and our competitors. Obviously, I'll say the scores from us are the best, which they are actually, but you don't have to believe that. But the second thing is, I don't think that anybody has figured it out. I think building an app like HelpChat or like a personal assistant, I know because I do it almost on a daily basis. I know what the retention cohorts look like. I know which features work. I know where the customer experience sucks. So for me, it's not so much about haptic or even about good service. I also closely follow Magic and Operator and Facebook M and Baidu's personal assistant and Google Now and about 30 more products which you guys wouldn't have heard of, including the 20 startups in India. I can name all of them. I follow everybody, and that's pretty much my job, but I am not, they don't show me the way forward at all, by far. So, yeah, that's all I can actually, so we do track them, but we know that that's not leading to any learning, and I'll tell you why. The reason is that what works at 500, 800, 1,000, 5,000 chats a day doesn't work at 50,000 chats a day, by far. So it's fine, and you will see some of those things as the product diverges quite a bit. Everybody will end up doing it the way they think is the best way. But we believe that having seen slightly more scale, having seen a lot more customers, we have now the ability to develop a personal assistant which actually fulfills the very ambitious promise of being a personal assistant.
And regarding this journey from being a customer, complaint solving, service to what you are now, what was really the problem there? I couldn't understand from what you mentioned. Was it really a scale issue? Was it a business model issue? What was it really that you moved from being a customer complaint solution service provider to?
So actually, I can answer again the question in two ways. One is that there isn't any specific problem per se, in the sense that an entrepreneur's life is tough day in, day out. You have so many different things moving throughout those 4 or 5 years. At that given point in time, the challenge looks reasonably difficult. When you look back, it looks like you were worried about something not that important. But to answer that question specifically, I think there were 3-4 challenges that we had to deal with internally. The first was that in Delhi, we were finding it slightly difficult to build a very top-notch product product philosophy. And also, I think in tech, we were finding it slightly difficult to find the kind of talent we wanted to. So we moved the top team to Bangalore. And that will cause some dissonance within the existing team in Delhi. And there were people who were, not happy about the fact that it seems that the center of the company is moving to Bangalore. But for us, it was the right decision. Out of the top 6-7 people, a few were married as well. So, their wives sacrificed, some of them quit their job, and they are right now here in Bangalore. In retrospect, it was actually a very good call. Bangalore, we've been able to hire some of the best product talent available. Our head of product has come in from Zynga and other places in Mobi, Adobe, and so on and so forth. So I think one good thing was that once we had taken the decision, then it didn't matter if it is the right thing to do. We would just go ahead and do it, even if it causes some problems. I think the second thing which people do say is that this company has this DNA or this company has that DNA. I think to some extent it is both true and not true. To the extent that it is true that for us to move from a customer experience management kind of space to suddenly towards the front end of the funnel, towards transactions ultimately, it did cause some dissonance for all of us, and it is sometimes difficult to think in those terms. So for example, the speaker before the previous one was talking about sales and deals and so on. It wasn't very intuitive a year ago that that's actually what works, even though throughout your own experience, you've been buying from Flipkart, Snapdeal, or traveling in Ola because of the discounts that they are giving and so on, but it doesn't connect back always to you. So building that transaction mindset, I think it took us probably 3 to 6 months. And once you see you're failing again and again at it, and you go back, you go out and talk to a lot of people, you kind of figure out the right place. I think the third thing that was a little bit of a change, but I think that is more because we scaled and we raised money and we did a branding campaign and we were publicly more noticed and so on, was the fact that suddenly things were different. At Akosha, we were like this one player for the whole space and so on. In HelpChat, we will compete with people. We will be under the public eye. There will be people who will talk about us either positively or negatively. Sometimes the press will talk positively or negatively. I think that was also one other change that happened over time as we changed the business model. But I think the first principles remain the same. Find the shortest path from A to B. Keep at it, and something hopefully should happen. We are fairly paranoid about succeeding, but also know that it will take a long time. Okay, there was one question at the back. You have a question?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ashish just asked about the recent event we were in the news for, which was about laying off of people. I did clarify it on my blog, but essentially two things happened. Actually, yeah, so maybe that's the reason for that question. So one other thing that happened was that in Delhi, for Akosha, for the complaint management part, we had several people who were in the call center because we were taking complaints over the phone as well, which is what I had explained earlier. What happened was we tried very hard to scale them to becoming chat experts because we needed people, and hiring people is very difficult. Some of them had worked with us for a while. But the problem is that in Delhi, the quality of written English skills was very, very poor. So, they can talk on the phone, but they can't write English. They can understand English, but they can't write English. And then, we waited for 2 months, 3 months. Then we said, they can't be a chat expert. They can't be a quality expert because if we make them quality, then they can't read English properly, or they won't be able to guide the chat expert and so on. We said, okay, let's shift them to one part of our enterprise team. Like, we tried everything. So people actually, we tried 4 or 5 different places. Then it came to a point where they were literally free for 2 months. And we said, look, it is not working out. We've tried very, very hard. Let's talk to 3 or 4 startups, which are anyway at that point trying to poach a few people from our team. And we said, let's call them over here and see if we can get you guys outplaced, because definitely it is very, very difficult to scale you up. The second part that happened was that we also tried another innovation, which ultimately didn't work out, was the work from home project, where what we said was, these are chats. You could help the customer answer all of these by building a knowledge base, and to some degree, some reliance on Google as well. Why don't we, instead of having all of these people inside the office, building the infra and doing all of this, why don't we have people work from home? Most of these were women. Work from home women program was actually fairly successful at some scale, but then it started breaking down very, very quickly. And the reason it broke down was that it was very, very difficult to really check presence in a chat software, right? So for example, for us, if a chat is coming in and you are logged in but not sitting on your computer, it was becoming very difficult to really track what was the reason why you couldn't reply or not reply. There was also a lot of, in India, you see some amount of, you could say, almost misbehavior where there were a few out of the total who were not answering the chats themselves. They were asking their son or their husband to answer it and so on. So you can imagine everything that, if you can let people get away with, people do end up doing that. And then it became a point where the only way to build a hardcore system which had a huge amount of accountability was to build a desktop client for them. At which point I said, look, this is a slippery slope. We should be building more and more innovation and personalization on the front end of the app rather than trying to do it because we've taken a decision to do work from home. If we cannot give the level of user experience that we want to our users because of this, then let's find a way to shut it down. And when we shut it down, we gave them their 1 month's notice and their salary and so on. And that is where the dilemma is. People were still unhappy and they have the right to be, and that's fine. Like, even I can't do much about that. But I think the dilemma was essentially that when you lay off people, do you ask them to go the same day or do you let them serve the 30-day notice period? And it's a thing that some of you will also face. The typical, and by chance this week itself, Twitter fired 336 people. Just today, Zomato is firing 300 people and so on. And it seemed that we were the first one, or rather before us actually, a couple of startups had also fired some people. But I think there are no easy answers. You have to take those calls and keep focused on the business. We had to do it. It was an experiment which failed, but I keep telling my team that don't worry, don't care so much about the negative press, because if it anyway stops you from experimenting the next time, we would actually not have as much innovation as we would like. So some things will go wrong, and it's fine. We could have handled some things a lot better, but it wouldn't have changed any of the decision that we took. I guess that answers your question. Okay, there was somebody at the back, I think.
Yeah, I have a question about your application, the Help Chat.
Yeah.
So I've been a regular user of this application for quite some time, and of late I've been seeing that the app offers quite a broad set of stuff to do, which is good. But my question is that what is that one thing that Help Chat does the best that the user should look up to the app to accomplish? And the second thing is, what is it that user can expect in the coming days or months as a major offering by the Help Chat app, since it is very broad set of offerings there?
Fair enough. So there is this so there are 2-3 ways of answering this question, and nobody's really built a very large personal assistant for millions of users yet. Microsoft has caught on. Everybody is trying something or the other, but I think the trick of personal assistant is in the personalization. There are 2 levels to your question. The first is bundling and unbundling, as I see it. Can you really bundle in so many use cases and yet stand for something for the user? I went to China about in March, April, met with WeChat because they were doing a lot of bundling into bundling of multiple use cases. Met with the Tencent guys, met with Xiaomi, which is trying to do some of this kind of things in their dialer because they own the whole phone operating system. We went to meet Baidu, which is doing Baidu plus Baidu Maps plus cabs and so on. So across the board, there are actually a lot of learnings on what can be bundled and what can't be bundled, but there is no right or wrong answer. Currently, if I look at actually the app behavior, the categories which people are really very happy to use and are coming back for again and again are categories like shopping assistant, which is one big category. Deals and coupons is really big as well. And then you have a lot of other categories. It's fairly, so the topmost category is probably 14-15%, which means that all the other 10 categories are also, there's no very big head. It's pretty flat after that. So in terms of what the user is telling us, I think it is good for us in the sense that a real life personal assistant, if you think about him or her, you don't think of him or her in terms of a specific sector. Their job is actually not to go and get the food for you and so on. Their job is actually to help you do multiple things across different sectors. And that took some time for us to actually realize and buckle down on. And now that we have in the last 1.5, 2 months, actually almost 3 months ago, what we are trying to do now is that we will probably never be an app where there is one single use case as is traditionally understood, that people come here for cabs or shopping or something else, but that people should come here because it's a personal assistant which can get different things done for them. So the layer of abstraction is slightly above. Now, how do you do a personal assistant well? There we have about 8 different parameters by which we judge ourselves. We are not great at a lot of them today, but there is now a certain path to be able to get there. And one of which is that a personal assistant has to be very, very personalized to you. It has to be able to anticipate your needs. It has to be able to find the best possible thing for you, and it has to have an opinion as well. So as we develop the product, it will actually flow in all of these three, in all of these directions and so on. As far as the next 3 to 6 months are concerned, we are basically focused on about 5 different things within the app which we are seeing a lot of traction on. One is the deals part. We recently acquired a company called Niffler, very, very smart guys. We got them to move from Bombay and become part of our team here. So deals we've kind of acquired, now we'll kind of build on top of that. The second feature in the app will be around cabs. Cabs are actually one of the daily use cases, but our user behavior showed that people were actually going to 2 or 3 different apps in the morning trying to find which one is the fastest. So now we are saying, we can integrate everybody and then start building like a personal assistant on top of that. We understand which cab you typically take. We know which one is the cheapest. We know you are flying to some place, so we can guess and book a cab for you. We can also intimate you when the surge pricing might start. We can also, so there are actually plethora of use cases that you can build once you know that you will follow an API approach and build from there. Not all of them will ship at the same time. In fact, building an app which has so many different kinds of things takes a lot of time and effort to ship. But I think over the next 3 to 6 months, you will see a dramatically different experience on the app. The other thing that we realized is that chat doesn't work for everything. There was this whole very strong conversation around messaging and how it's going to change everything, how WeChat is doing X or Y in China and so on. I think that is all true, but I think one aspect of that which is a little bit of a nuance is that not everything is actually easier to do in chat. In fact, a lot of transaction-oriented things are actually a lot more difficult to do in chat. So that learning, there was nobody we could have gone to and learned from. So that took us about 3 to 6 months because, again, it was working at smaller scale. It doesn't work at a larger scale. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ankur.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot. Thanks, guys.